internet of value at Ripple, we're thinking much bigger than just cross-border payments. It's kind of like Amazon with rare books in the early days, just this market happens to be a $10 trillion market.
We are at a historic turning point.
Said in the past that you are doing for money what email did for communication.
Moving the whole revolution forward.
Take on it.
There's trillions of dollars parked around the world. XRP.
Is there a possibility that Ripple could take over SWIFT one day?
Well,
welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of 24 Hour Script. Let's get right into today's video. My heart is about to jump out of my body right now. You guys have no idea. The information I'm about to present to you, what is taking place, is just remarkable. We have to address something monumental that Christine Lagarde just said in regards to central banks not being around for much longer. And, she's not going to speak more on it. And don't forget what the IMF said back in 2021 in regards to that whole stablecoin issuers becoming banks.
Now, here's the real riddle. If these stablecoins are regulated like banks, don't they end up becoming the banks that crypto assets were meant to replace?
And then when that came out, we said Ripple was going to be a bank. You got to understand that Ripple changes the complete view of banking. Okay, so that is why Christine Lagarde is even saying that it is tremendous, folks.
So I'm not going to tell you that there is a red line. I'm not going to tell you that central banks will always be around either. But I think that the nature of the purpose for which debt is subscribed will matter more than the actual volume.
Speak to what you did. You just said something very intriguing.
No, I'm not going to speak more to it.
No to the idea that central banks might not always be around. What did you mean by that?
Look, I went through my lot of crises, as many of you have as well. And I remember the days when it was mentioned that, central bankers are the only game in town. This is not the right approach to a balanced and durable equilibrium. Measures have to be taken by fiscal authorities. Reforms have to be undertaken.
Crypto companies should be held to standards that banks are, and banks should be held to standards that crypto companies are in order to compete. So.
And then you heard what Brad Garlinghouse said. Remember, we talked about that briefly in yesterday's episode. It is remarkable, the closed-door meetings that have taken place. We're all seeing it now, unfold. Ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and smash that like button. This is going to get crazy. A crisis is going to happen, okay? We are in for a crisis. They were talking about crisis.
About the amount of debt in the system today. Not talking about corporate debt, but sovereign debt. And the reason I ask is back in the 1920s, at least in the United States, there was a budget surplus. I believe there was actually a budget surplus in a lot of other countries as well, not everywhere, of course. But today in the U.S., there's $38 trillion of debt. And the playbook that we all learned, actually, in the aftermath of 1929 is what do you do when there's a crisis to stem it? You throw money at the problem. Ben Bernanke learned this and effectuated in 2008. We did it again during the pandemic. And the thing that I've always thought about is the next time there is a panic of some sort, and there will be a pullback of some sort, whether the politicians say, well, we now have the playbook. We know what we're supposed to do.
And Ripple has the best individuals that went through the crisis. Okay, for example, you have Sheila Bair. Okay, Sheila Bair is on Ripple USD's advisory board. And this is insane to have an individual like this on your roster, okay? Let alone all the other handful of individuals. Because if you guys do not know who Sheila Bair is, okay, she's the former chair of the FDIC and the founding chair of the Systemic Risk Council. The Systemic Risk Council is very important because we have another Ripple individual by the name of Sandy O'Connor, a part of the Systemic Resolution Advisory Committee. She's been there for 5 years and 7 months. So she was at the FDIC at the same time she was at Ripple. You don't think Sandy was speaking to Sheila in regards to Ripple and, potential outlooks of this ecosystem? Are you insane? Okay, and then we have her at the board of directors at BNY Mellon since 2021. And remember, we were saying, they're all working in silence. And then in 2025, Ripple comes out saying Ripple selects BNY to custody Ripple USD reserves. Folks, Do not underestimate the XRP community, and do not underestimate $100 XRP, because it is going to happen 100%. Everything that we have talked about on this channel has happened. And the big puzzle piece is that $100 piece. And in today's video, like I said, your jaw is going to be hitting the floor all day. You might have to step into a hospital to get that fixed. But Sheila Bair, twice named by Forbes magazine as the second most powerful woman in the world. She is perhaps best known as chair of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation from 2006 to 2011, when she steered the agency through the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. And now she is on the board of RLUSD. And remember when we talked about connecting every single economy together? We're going to get into that in a moment, that clip. And we're going to get into the projects that we talked about in 2023 about Project Mariana, because something huge was said here. Okay, listen to this Project Mariana part here back in 2023. Are you ready for this? Future work could deepen and broaden Project Mariana in 3 dimensions. First, the commercial viability of AMMs for spot FX transactions using wholesale CBDCs may be explored. This would require collaboration from relevant stakeholders in existing FX markets. Several aspects could be investigated, including a profitability of liquidity provision while keeping transaction costs competitive with existing FX markets. And then look at this, mechanisms to alleviate the cost of pre-funding. Hello, pre-funding, does that ring a bell to you? Short-term credit, the economic use of liquidity pool tokens in payments, repos, and swaps. Oh my God. And I'm going to get more into this Project Mariana and what they said, and also how Ethereum failed. This is going to get just crazy. And folks, the yacht event in Miami, not going to be in Miami. It's going to be in Panama, as you guys all know. I'm going to talk about that at the end of this video. There's only 15 spots, and I'm going to talk about exactly what's going to be included, okay? And further communication is going to go out as soon as we finalize the full list. But take a listen to this. Remember, Ripple came in here, and the goal was to create the inner value. In order to activate the inner value, you must have everybody on board and connect every single economy together. This is something that has never happened in human history. So when you're doing that, you're also going to be implementing a new world order. So that's why you guys have been hearing new world order for a long time, because once you change how the financial ecosystem operates, because at the end of the day, money makes the world go around, you change the entire landscape of how the next decades are going to look. And we are at that crucial history moment, and the people that do not understand it.
We took 3 economies, Singapore, France, and Switzerland, and pooled their CBDCs in a common kind of offshore pool that was an automated market maker. And in that automated market maker, all the currencies could trade against each other.
Interoperability of economies, actually connect more than 200 countries, and particularly their payments and securities infrastructures with each other.
The ability to enhance each other's understanding, the ability to connect the diverse economies, 200 or so countries in the world, and make sure the payment system works for all different profiles of companies.
And fairer, we need systems that connect countries. In other words, we need interoperability.
So at Ripple, what we are doing is focusing on building out that DLT international network.
And of course, we have to put the icing on the cake with Marcus Treasure talking about what they're doing at Ripple, and that is creating an international network. Pretty much connecting every single economy together. That's what they're trying to do, and XRP is going to play a major role. And now take a listen to Daniel. Listen to what he says here when he's asked about a bridge currency, and look at the way he answers it. And he's not really trying to hide anything, but he answered it perfectly. And if you watch my previous 2 videos, this video clip is going to complement that really well.
Well, I don't want to disappoint you, but I probably won't be able to answer that question. I mean, I can make some general, I can give a general trajectory, but I probably won't be able to answer it accurately. I mean, a bridge currency, the definition is a currency that's an intermediary between 2 other currencies, right? So I want to move, let's say, Swiss francs to pounds. The question is, will I be able to do that one-to-one? Let's think, it's not really a conversion, right? But will I be able to find someone in the UK that wants to take my Swiss francs, and will someone in the UK find someone in Switzerland that's willing to take their pounds? So the degree to which that connection can be made with an efficient pricing structure, there's really no reason for a bridge currency. Right, because you can trade this asset against this asset, this central bank money against this central bank money. The practicality of it, though, is that if you think about the number of different currencies and how much liquidity needs to be available to make those transactions, it becomes less and less efficient because there simply often isn't enough liquidity there. And when I say liquidity, what I mean is depth of the market. It means that if I want to now send, 100 Swiss francs, maybe I'll find 100 Swiss francs for for pounds. Maybe I'll find a counterparty. But if I want to send 100 million, I may not find a counterparty. So there isn't enough liquidity, maybe, between Swiss francs and pounds for me to send $100 million every day. But there may be more liquidity if we pool all of our liquidity into one type of currency. Now, there's a historical context of how that generally comes to be, how that currency comes to be. But once you pool all that liquidity, you can create more efficient pricing structures because you can say, okay, well, instead of looking for a counterparty directly, if I have the Swiss francs looking for the counterparty in British pounds, well, what I can do is just do Swiss franc dollar, dollar pounds, and Swiss franc dollar will have enough liquidity for my $100 million transaction, and pounds to dollar will have it. And then that currency becomes the bridge currency. So it's a very practical thing at the end of the day. It's really about liquidity. At the end of the day, it's really about liquidity.
Now, the second one is more complicated. It has to do with liquidity. So imagine that you have a pair of currencies for which there is not a complementary demand. You need to go and search for a third-party currency in order to make this settlement actually happens. And this really complicates things. So we need to put pieces of technology that can make more efficiency this use of liquidity so that more transactions can be settled.
Have this pre-funding, and instead you can use a digital asset to have global liquidity on demand.
Safety for the market, but they're also looking for institutions which are bridging different zones, different pools of liquidity. And this is where a financial market infrastructure starts playing a role, because indeed we need to first see how the market is emerging, but then when we are starting to reach a certain level of maturity, then indeed having a financial market infrastructure which can allow interoperability between different pools of liquidity, but also with the traditional finance, has a lot of value.
The reason they're there, though, is because of the deficiencies of creating sufficient liquidity, or the issues with denominating things in different asset prices because the conversion is so tricky. But if there's technologies that maybe mitigate some of those problems, I think it calls into question the relevance, the future relevance of these bridge currencies. So, I'll give you a hypothetical example. If in the future we have common platforms that are connected across economies that can solve this kind of liquidity issue between currencies, hey, if Swiss franc to pounds will give me a better rate if I do it directly against each other versus going through the dollar or the euro or the yen or any other rich currency, then that's what I'll do. I mean, it's a very, very practical thing at the end of the day. And the motivation for this is, we hear a lot of things. I think, you can look at the digital euro that talk about strategic autonomy and payments, so wanting autonomy over their own payment systems. There's a general desire by most jurisdictions to denominate their assets. Think about government bonds, think about exports, things like that, in their own price, because if you're denominating it in dollars, you're taking foreign exchange risk with your own exports in a currency that you have absolutely no control over. So there are very, very reasonable reasons to want to look at these type of tools more closely. And I mean, I can't really predict what the future will hold, but my sense is that there will be a more competitive, open, innovative approach to how we move around value. And I think that's kind of that would be really my only observation of the future going forward.
Hey, XRP cannot be cheap to handle all this value. Like, if it's being used for what they're trying to do right now, it can't be cheap, period. Triple digits will happen 100%. It logically makes no sense for it not to happen. And now take a listen to what he says here.
It's interesting. I mean, I'll give you an example. We released this week a project called Project Mariana. And in this project, we looked specifically at, we envision a world where CBDCs exist. And we took 3 economies, Singapore, France, and Switzerland, and pooled their CBDCs in a common kind of offshore pool that was an automated market maker. And in that automated market maker, all the currencies could trade against each other. So I bring that example as like a serious departure from the way we think about foreign exchange today.
So the Project Mariana, which we covered previously, was tested with only 3 economies. And remember, it didn't work out the way they wanted to with Ethereum. I'll get to that in a moment. Ethereum failed. We know it's going to fail. It's not, Bitcoin and Ethereum are not going to be the go-to for these financial institutions because there's a lot of gaps. Further work is needed to understand the role of central banks and wholesale CBDCs in broader tokenized ecosystems, potentially including stablecoins, tokenized deposits, and financial instruments such as tokenized bonds and securities. Oh my goodness, you guys have no idea what's coming down the pipeline. And listen to this icing on the cake. Overall, even the experimental architecture was based on a uniform protocol standard, public and permission versions of Ethereum. The implementation of the bridges was complex. It required the interplay of 3 infrastructures: the domestic platform, the transnational network, and the relayer infrastructure hosted by the respective central bank. Oh my God, that is so bad. In particular, ensuring reliable and consistent communication between the networks proved to be challenging. Such challenges may be considerable greater for the establishment of bridges between platforms based on different protocols. And if you guys remember, Mike Blandina looking over wholesale CBDCs at JP Morgan saying this.
But I think Bitcoin and Ethereum have failed to be a payment method.
And many people will learn the hard way about the value of XRP when it happens suddenly. And to finish it all off, and this is going to be another icing on the cake, another layer, listen to what he says here about the problem about offline payments.
Another issue that is a lot of attention is being paid to is offline. And when I think about offline, it's not I want to buy a sandwich on an airplane that doesn't have Wi-Fi. I'm talking about, earthquakes, tsunamis, whole economies that are offline for an unknown amount of time with no previous notice. That is not a simple thing to solve, and that is definitely a rainy day that needs to be thought through carefully. Privacy is another huge one. So there's a lot of reason.
And guess what, baby? Project Polaris, May 2023, a handbook for offline payments with CBDCs. We have 2 Ripple employees, Anthony Ralphs, Anthony Welfare, and guess what? There's nobody else here. From Algorand, from Stellar, from Chainlink. I'm not saying the assets that I just named, they're all going to perform well. But I don't understand why people keep comparing XRP to any other digital assets because it is not comparable.
But yet people like to keep on comparing it, but soon they'll see the decouplement and they'll just stop. And now let's get into an update on the yacht party. It is going to happen in Panama, June 11th, 2026. The link is in the description down below. Okay, it is 3 per household, maximum 15 people. There's already 15 people confirmed. Okay, and we are going to do another max of 15 additional. This is going to be highly exclusive. It's going to have our yacht charter for 6 hours or 5 hours. We'll see how it goes because it is a smaller group, so it's going to be a lot more easy to kind of alleviate in terms of after the yacht. We're probably going to be doing, if all goes well, a private dinner at my house, and it's going to be just absolutely incredible. If the dinner is not going to be at my house, it'll be at a private event. So the yacht will be during the day, and the private dinner would be during the night. And then on top of that, man, just I'll send everybody over with the emails in full detail. Okay, but take a look at the description down below for the yacht tickets. It'll tell you exactly what's more there as well, what's included in the price. Highly exclusive, and like I said, there's going to be a lot of networking, a lot of good times to be shared. June 11th, 2026, folks. With that being said, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and we'll be back with another video.
Well, XRP, and I sometimes have to remind the world of this, but XRP is at the heart and soul of what Ripple is doing. We care deeply. We have called it our North Star. But at the end of the day, we want to do things that are good for the XRP ecosystem. We want to build trust in XRP. We want to build utility in XRP. And we want to build liquidity in XRP. And each of the acquisitions we do, in one way or another, we believe it will do those things. Now, it may not be, some people may look at it and be like, I don't really, scratch their head a little bit. Well, I promise you that we see in the three-dimensional game of chess, we see how we believe that's going to evolve. Sometimes we'll probably do things that are more obvious and some less obvious. That's okay with us.
Right, there might be...
One of the advantages of being private is I don't always have to explain myself to public investors.
We started building RippleNet with the thesis that crypto liquidity would eventually be able to support robust global payments, large payments. RippleNet was designed so that customers seeing the benefits of our fiat-based network could flip the switch to ODL once the market was mature enough. And this is exactly what's happening. Flip the switch.
I think what we're building has, it's solving a real problem. And I think all of the tokens, my advice to anybody would be, understand the utility. If there's real utility and there's real value being delivered to a real customer, there will be value in the token.